Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Deepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast.
Thank you.
You just heard Andy Littleton say thank you, and he's a pastor at Mission Church, and I am Pastor Eric at the Village Church. We live in Tucson, Arizona, less than a mile away from each other. Mm-hmm. Our churches are like 3 miles away from each other, I think.
They're very close, but they have different personalities.
And guess what? It's a compelling and riveting conversation about churches' personalities.
Riveting.
And
Okay.
I don't even think we can even say it gets better as you go. It's just one nice, beautiful conversation.
It is a pretty consistent conversation.
Yeah.
Riveting.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Well, Eric,
Check.
we have talked about, all of our businessy things before the podcast. So
yeah, we did some off-air stuff.
Now the business in front is done, and we can just go right into the party in the back.
Have you ever listened? Yeah, like we're the mullet of podcasts.
The mullet of podcasts.
Well, a lot of times when I hear interviews, they'll be like, "Yeah, well, when we were off-air, we talked about." I'm like, well, "Why? Why didn't you talk on air about these things?" So
I'll tell you why we didn't and why they don't is because sometimes you shouldn't.
But it makes me curious. Don't tell me that you talked about interesting things without me.
Well, we just did it. I just did it.
Well, we did. We talked about interesting things about you, and that's just the way it is, guys.
And don't you wish you could? Well, here's how you do it: is you plant a church in the Christian Reformed Church, and you join us.
All right, there you go.
You can have those conversations.
Yeah.
So we're just in Tucson. We're not like that exclusive.
We're not that exclusive.
No, really not. But you had a good idea, you had several good ideas in a text message. But I liked this one. Do churches have personalities?
Yeah. Do churches have personalities? And how does a church get a personality? Like, why is Mission Church feel different than the Village? To Christ Community feels different to both of those.
Yeah.
Some are similar, but they have different personalities.
They do. And we were mentioning other churches in town, some small, some big, but they all have these unique things, and often what people gauge is the belief statements. I don't think that's what it is. I think you could have 5 churches with the exact same belief statement, but they would still have. I think it could be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it has to be at least a small part. Right?
It's a part of it because your beliefs do shape that personality. But I think it's a lot of other factors that are more subtle and important. Okay, so I drove up to the Village right now, and I had this topic in mind. And these are not new observations, but I just drove up and I was like, even from knowing Eric, if I had never seen this place,
right,
but if I knew you pretty well, I would drive up and go, "This is Eric's church," and I know this isn't Eric's church. I know there's a lot of other people here, Eric. I know it's not just you.
Yeah, let's get some pushback on that one. Okay,
but
Okay.
But I'm still going to hold to what I'm saying right now. This is Eric's church, and Eric's here.
Right.
How would I know Eric's here? Because the car in front is so obviously Eric's car. Why is it so obviously Eric's car?
Has it got some duct tape on its bumpers?
It's duct taped together. It has mismatched rims. It is a good car.
Very reliable.
Very reliable, but it is and I'm not going to call this I was tempted to say, like, you don't care about the aesthetics. I actually think you really do. I think your aesthetic is like imperfection, and that you embrace that, and that's part of your motif. This is good. It's good enough. It's not perfect. It's it's reliable transportation, and I'm okay with exhibiting the imperfections of it. And then, so I know you're here because I see that car. And even if I didn't know it was your car, I'd be like, that looks like an Eric car.
Right.
And then I look at the building, and it is exactly the same. It's the same. You've got peeling, stucco that you or someone you've authorized has decided to paint underneath to kind of give it
like a faux
brick thing, but it still is peeling stucco, and the rain's still getting behind it, which is long term going to keep peeling it, and it's going to be an issue. And
then we'll just paint the whole building.
And then you'll just do that, and there's I've known that you have this statement, unhindered by quality control, and
sure.
So I look at the place, and then I walk in, and it's warm, it's very lived in space. I mean, even as we're in here right now, I'm like, are those mittens sitting up there by the computer? We've got an empty.
This is my heating pad.
Eric's heating pad is it's just sitting out next to the computer. We've got then there's a little drawing, maybe by a child, sitting on top. There's some things displayed purposefully. Some things are laying here. Right. Computer screens need to be elevated, so they're sitting on old books that, from what I know of you, are the books somebody gave you, but you never read. The works of Jonathan Edwards and what Luther says. Like those are propping up computer screens because you're not sitting here studying those.
Right.
But you don't mind having them. They're really great computer props.
Yeah.
And that's just this room, but the couches and it's very, this is the values, this is the ethos of Eric and his friends. His people.
Yeah, and I think it represents like pretty much what I'd say middle class houses in Tucson.
Yeah.
Like what I experience when I go into them, not upper middle class, but just middle class.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that, and you live into that. You're not trying to be better than that or impress them. You're trying to be part of it. And that's all there. And you could give me your version of mine. I don't think that's all there is, by the way. I'm not trying to reduce it to these aesthetics.
But it builds a certain personality.
That's part of it. Yeah. So there's my initial drive up with this in mind, reflection on why I say, yes, churches have unique personalities.
And do you think like churches have personalities, like a church plant, like the Village kind of got its personality from Rod and me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the Mission has a lot of your personality. I would say you and Mike.
I absolutely.
You two are the personality drivers of that.
I would say that is absolutely true.
Yeah. But let's say like you pass away, and then some Mission Church is 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it's gonna have some of the personality, but
it'll change.
It'll change, but that the leadership maybe, or the people that it tracks help shape that some maybe.
I would say that unless it's one of those changes where essentially the whole core of people, if the core of people stays that had gathered around what was built by certain people, there's going to be some of that personality that stays in it, that lives on. And I was thinking about this too. Like, I think founders are a big part of that.
Sure.
A huge part. But I think even attendees, and I think especially influential people, can shift a personality.
Yes.
As well. Yeah. Have you observed that? Like, have you had eras of the Village where there's been this talk, I think, at the Village of like there was like a group of girls that were in college at one period of time.
Yeah, they're all married now.
And they're all married now.
Podcast.
Yeah. Did the personality of the Village change when they transitioned from being a group of girls in college to being like married children?
Sure. I mean,
listening to this podcast.
I think that there's always, stage of life shift things. I think so. you said at the beginning that belief statements and theology is part, but not necessarily the thing that gives the personality.
And I was saying, I think when people look often,
this is a Reformed church, or this is a Baptist church.
Yes.
So I think that it really depends on, like, all churches have values.
Yeah.
But not all churches are value driven.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what can give a church a personality is if it has a value system of which it all they agree and believe in. And so, like, if so it's a lot of what you see when you walk into the Village is just built out of the value system.
Yeah.
And so, like, for instance, like, I love your car. Car's a great example. Like, so our value system is accessibility. When my wife was at the Grace, the pastor, when she was a kid, the pastors drove Mercedes and Jaguars.
Right.
I drive a duct taped. I'm not saying I'm better, but I drive a duct taped, Toyota Corolla. That's accessibility.
Right.
It says that, like, pretty much anybody in my church can afford to drive the Corolla, right? The duct taped one, anyway. It says that the pastor is accessible at some level. That doesn't mean if you have a different car, you're not accessible, but it is a value, like the value is being demonstrated because it's that. So I think that's part of it. I think it's just we have a very strong value system that we worked on to build.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I do think when you have a system of saying, hey, like, what does God's community bring to this? Like, this wasn't my idea. Say, for instance, we do this huge makers camp.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my idea. I'm not like, I want to do makers camp. But it is authentic to our community.
Yeah.
And so we do makers camp.
Yeah.
Pilgrim groups, we didn't have pilgrim groups until, I would say, 4 or 5 years in, and that was developed by one of our leaders.
Yeah.
And that shaped our community. So, like, a lot of those things, I think if there's a value system and then you start letting people function in it, then it does take on a particular personality.
Yeah.
And then the job of the pastors and elders are to guide and nurture that and correct it. But I think you're so right. Like, I think at least church plants, you're partly setting out to have a personality.
Yeah.
Like, because you're trying to say, well, what's the culture in and around my church, and how do I communicate the gospel in a way that is authentic to me and clear to the people around me, and it feels like something they can step into.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't feel super foreign. I mean, the actual gospel itself might, but the things that you're using to, like, invite people to come and worship and experience Jesus.
Now, so this came to my mind too, and I know for both of us this is an area to be sensitive, but I think it factors in. So we had a leadership transition.
Yes.
And in the last couple years, it's been noted to me that the personality of the church, as that'd be a way to say it, has changed.
Sure.
And that there's just a different, experience. Mm-hmm. You've had such things.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you've, like, noticed that like, and I'm not saying, like, because one was wrong or right, but it is different and it will work for different people.
Yeah.
And so in a way, like, even during that period a couple of years ago, Mike and I were probably still setting the tone. I would say none of that changed, but this is, I guess, what I'm saying. When people have influence, the personality changes. Mm-hmm. And then when influential people, and I don't just mean staff, I mean, when I say people with influence, people that
have the ear of leadership, or people who have strong personalities,
impact the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how have you seen that factor in?
Well, And actually shaping the personality.
Yeah, like staying on that specific topic, just the personality.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
What does it mean to live a life of faith? What does it mean to live as a Catholic Christian? Hi, this is Bishop Kevin Sweeney, host of the podcast Beyond the Beacon. Join me as we unravel and discuss the mysteries of our faith, of the church, of living as Catholic Christians. Be inspired by engaging interviews with priests and seminarians, deacons, religious, women and men who live the life of faith day by day here in our Diocese of Paterson, in food pantries and classrooms and parishes and ministry. How is God working in their lives today? How is God working in our lives? Join me as I ask them and be part of the conversation on Beyond the Beacon. Listen and follow Beyond the Beacon wherever you get your podcasts or watch it on my YouTube channel. Please check the show notes for more details. Thank you and God bless you.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we won't fully at the village fully know like the transition of Rod and his personality in our church for another 20 years.
Yeah.
Because he's still around, but because he was here for 25 years and he really put his DNA into it alongside mine, here's a very significant thing, and I'm not, and again, please, it's a little critique of your church, but it's not one to say it's part of the character, right?
Sure.
So, where the village is like, we're going Cadillac, we're going excellence, is what you eat, and there's a lot put into that, and the church is full of foodies, So when you're going to go there, like you're eating a meal, you're going to pay anywhere else $20 a plate for sometimes. Like it's really high end. And it's not like that every time. Sometimes they're hot dogs and hamburgers, but it's people put their creative energy into it, and it's high level. I would actually line it up with your music in the sense of like, I think at the village we have just as many good musicians, but Mike has a value of excellence. And it's not just excellence in like I play excellent. It's the sound system, the aesthetic. Like he's worked it out and just very obviously thought about it all. And it's very important to him. Same with the food. Same with what we want you to experience afterwards. Don't experience that at your guys' place. Not that I don't get good food, but it's just not the same.
And it varies, which says something. Like there are certain people if they're highly integrated in the meal team that week, it'll be one version, and then there's teams that are a little more like, hey, like
let's get it on the table.
We've got a team, and they're an awesome team, but their thing is like tacos are simple. We do them every time. They're the team. They're the taco team. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
and right in there is the difference.
Yeah,
we don't have food teams.
Yeah,
it's an individual expression of that person. So yes, sometimes. There's a couple who makes tacos always, and it's a joke, but the tacos are really good. Yeah. Like that, because they're putting their time and energy into the process. Right? Yeah. So it's just like, so those two things shape the personality, right? Mm-hmm. Like they shape it.
Yeah, totally. And the when you think about a person's personality, the things they put emphasis on. And then there's just the ways that they make you feel. I mean, one of our challenges, this is one of the beautiful things about Mission, is we make space for people who are dealing with disabilities and who are experiencing or recently experienced homelessness. Mm-hmm. That's and many people have told us it's one of the beautiful things, but it's also why we've heard from a number of people that they don't think Mission can be home. And that's a real tension we face, because it's like, and I get it, and I don't think it's just as simple as, oh, I do or don't like this. Like when people deal with disabilities, sometimes they have struggles with boundaries, and that takes a lot of work and energy. And if you are trying to figure out faith and you've got other challenges or background in your life, sometimes also facing that boundary conversation every time you come to worship, that's a challenge. And you have to decide, like, can the relationship with this church, with this personality, is it doable for me? Can I face that challenge to do this, right?
Yeah. And I think this is where I love this conversation.
Yeah.
Because environmental psychology comes into this so much.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And the reason I get that is your room.
Yeah.
It's too small for that kind of ministry. And I'm not saying it isn't the God,
right.
but what it does is it produces this like, oh, I'm cramped in with these people. And so it makes it really hard. Like where if you go to a church doing the exact same thing you guys are doing now,
but with a massive and multiple spaces. And,
right. Yeah. Then you can go sit. You'll never actually run into those.
And it's not that you are avoiding these people, but you can achieve space easily.
Yes.
And actually, it's funny because we're talking about that right now. Like, how could we make space for some of our younger people who love the church, but also feel sometimes like they can't get away from those engagements and aren't mature enough to know how to just say, I need you to give me some space. Mm-hmm. And so we've been talking through, okay, where can we relocate? Can we create another space on this property? Which I think is doable in stages where there can be these multiple spaces.
Yeah. So yes, all like space shapes your personality.
Yep.
The way that space looks. I think so. Where I think theology tends to end up overriding like philosophy, so to speak, of ministry is when I think your building and the way it is laid out and what it looks like shapes a lot of who you are.
Oh, totally. Your physical space.
So I grew up and I could go from the Baptist church to the Reformed church to the non-denominational church. And for the most part, they looked exactly the same. They had the pews. They had either like some kind of, carpeted floor. It was either pink or whatever. And they all looked the same. And even though I know they all sang maybe slightly different hymns, but they sounded the same.
Yeah.
The preacher preached with a particular way that seemed similar.
Yeah.
And so part of it is like, so then the belief system. So now I'm going, the Baptist has a particular liturgy and that's shaping the personality.
Yeah.
And the Reformed person our church has a certain liturgy, and the Bible-based churches, they like to call the non-denominational churches, have a liturgy. Yeah. And that's what's shaping their personality is a liturgy now. Because they all look the same. So it's how they do the thing inside the same building.
But but I still would say the person leading the liturgy, the way that they talk.
Right.
Do they seem calm or tense?
Mm-hmm.
Do they come across as critical or generous? Mm-hmm. Those little subtleties can make the two churches that have the same doctrinal statement and the same liturgy have a completely different, to some degree, personality.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think like when I was starting out in the, emerging church movement, like there was this thing where it's still going on, but you have people going to the Orthodox and Catholic Church because of the environment.
Right.
So sort of this really awe-inspiring architecture, something that was beyond themselves. So, statues and columns and wood floors instead of carpet.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's part of it.
Or you were moving to this other aesthetic of which we went to, which is the couches and the candles and the the different sounding music and really environmental work was happening in the late 90s, like that the shift in how we do these things. That I think that shapes personality. And I think about it more. So I go to your church, and because it has so much personality, I go in just the building itself. And I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the painting on the wall, the new paintings I haven't seen. I'm thinking about like the bingo sign, the brick walls. There's just all these little bits and pieces that you guys have been working on that's in your personality. And it's so it's interesting because it's so carefully taken care of. And then you walk into the side room and you're like, this is worse than the village. So you have that really...
Yeah.
It's almost you get to see the tension of we really care about people, and we know that people are way more important than the environment. And then the other is like, oh, but some of us really love curated environments. And so you guys are going back and forth in that.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
It's you feel that tension when you go in there.
I think that's true. Yeah. I mean, I always think, so when we planted originally, and I talk about this every once in a while still with the group. Well, I just talked with potential new members and I explained this. I said, we wanted to be something that grew out of Tucson. And though we were all from Tucson, we needed to give that some thought. And so we went to places that Midtown Tucsonans love to be at. And we asked, what are their values? How do they express those? And we went to Bookman's. We chose Trader Joe's, even though it's
Bookman's looks a little bit more like the Village.
Yeah, I mean, we have Bookman-ish things going on too.
Yes, you do. Lamps, couch, chairs here. Yeah.
Raging Sage for coffee, because you could have gone your high end, newer Cartel or something, but we were like, no, we're looking at the Raging Sage, that group of people who are more unchurched generally. Trader Joe's was the grocery store we chose, even though it's not a local chain, but it's one of the more embraced ones in Midtown. Why? And Buffalo Exchange. And so there were a number of things. Some were surprises. I mean, but there was a lot of the preference of the reused old to the new, emphasis on art and creativity. One thing that was interesting, none of those spaces have separated space for children. Every single one, the closest is Bookman's, but even then it's like open to the whole store. And all of them they were not designed to move you in and out. They were all designed to linger. And so we thought about those things, and all of those things were things I realized I appreciated as well. Those are honest to me as a Tucsonan, and none of those are a problem with Christianity. They were all helpful. All those spaces, in none of those spaces did the employee and the boss present differently. You couldn't tell the difference. And actually I read a book by the founder of Buffalo Exchange, and I read kind of founding documents and training manual for Trader Joe's, and some stuff from Bookman's, and all of them stated this stuff. Like Trader Joe's has there's slight differentiation in the type of Hawaiian shirt you wear, but you aren't supposed to be able to tell who's the boss, who's the subordinate, and they have rules in there like whoever sees the spill cleans it up. Yeah. Things that say like, we're not higher than. So we were in a way identifying a personality that already existed in Midtown and saying we want to be a Christian expression of that existing personality.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. This goes back to our big podcast with Fitch. When that question was asked, could something like the Village end up in Chicago? And even to extend my answer that I gave him in saying yes, is that I didn't actually plant a church I didn't do that study. Instead, I did a deep dive into my own generation and millennials and Gen Xers. And so that we built a church for a mindset and a people. And it has a lot of Arizona flavor to it. Yeah. But it's why we attract lots of missionary kids, ex-missionary kids, or kids who grew up in the mission field but aren't missionaries, that kind of thing.
And one of my favorite compliments, and actually we got it recently from someone newer Christian, but who's a longtime Tucsonan. She said to me the thing that we were always hoping, and I've heard it from other people, but she just said it so clearly. She said, what I enjoy about mission is it just still feels like Tucson. And I was like, I thought, oh, that's the personality we were going for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we were intending to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is cool to hear it from somebody who's new to observing it.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, I think the thing that the drum that I've always been beating on, and why I think this conversation is important, is that I think for churches to be effective, they do have to deconstruct less. Deconstruction is less about deconstructing the evangelical like mindset or any of that thing. It's deconstructing your environment.
Yeah.
You've bought into sort of the Walmart, Target.
Well, yeah. Oh gosh. So I heard this little clip from Lecrae, the rapper, the other day, where he was talking about churches, and he was comparing them. He said he loved Chipotle. This was out there somewhere, and he said, but if I went, I got the bag of chips didn't have the salt and it was wrong, I wouldn't say, oh, Chipotle's bad. I would say that wasn't a very well run Chipotle. So his point was, in churches, yeah, you'll experience some churches that have problems, and maybe that for you is not a church that you could go to, but don't say the whole church is that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that, but similar to it would be you've had an experience or you grew up in a type of church, right? To know that it has its own unique personality is important. That doesn't mean that isn't all church, and that you will find a variety of personalities of churches, and they're all part of Christ, or most. But I think that's important. I was flashing back. You were talking about the ancient churches and Catholicism, and then what you created. I was on a panel at Graduate Christian Fellowship the other day with 2 Catholic priests, right? And there was, I really enjoyed that, and I don't want to be disparaging at all, because I really respected how much they talked about how the Catholic Church isn't an individualistic reading of Scripture and all that, and they have some real points there. But something that stood out in hearing them say that was the 2 priests had very different personalities. And I would assume that people choose parishes often
by personality.
And there's a little more individualism in there than maybe is recognized sometimes, right? Like the one guy was and he talked about how he had come out of the Pentecostal church and had become Catholic, but his charisma was significant. And he used the power of his personality to persuade. The other guy, far more kind of affable, chill, had a very different way,
so to speak,
of expressing the same things.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can remember Father Harry. It's very popular.
I remember Father Harry.
Yeah.
I only went to one funeral he did, but he's a memorable guy.
Yeah. Big parish.
Yeah.
It felt very, very evangelical when you would go to their service.
It was very hairy.
Very hairy. He was very hairy. Father
Speaking
Harry.
of mullets, where we started this conversation.
Yeah, we get back. He did have one.
He did have one.
Wow. So I don't know. Like I think your environment, I think your values, I think how much people think about, like a lot of times people are thinking in church, like, well, are we teaching the gospel? Are we building disciples? Are we giving like, are we training our children? And that can shape a lot of what the personality is. But I think you're right. I think the personality of the person up front, I think the personality of the influential people, I think the environment has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And I think you got to think about your environment. I think what's sad to me is the average church size is 75 people. 75.
Right.
That's adults and children. That's not just adults. And when I see pictures of churches that are small, a lot of times they look big.
Yeah.
Right. They have a really nice stage.
Right.
And it seems they spent money on that. I'm like, well, that's where the value system is different.
Yeah.
And at least at the Village, where I'm like, yeah, the money's not getting spent on the stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something else, the food.
Yeah.
Right? It's and sometimes like why we all don't need the same stage. I think that's probably where, like, I go to mission. You guys, you have an exit door.
Yes.
Behind the speaker. It's so distracting to me sometimes. I'm like, there's an exit door right there.
And you know what's hilarious is, and in the personality, like in any home, you've got multiple people. Mike and I differ on our view of that. And, this spoiler alert, I don't care that much, but he cares a lot about how that's behind the speaker and in the stream. Mm-hmm. And so when we, in the not so distant future, reconfigure the front, I will defer. Not that I don't agree with him. I just wouldn't care.
So,
but I will choose to do what he cares about on this, because I care about Mike, and he's had a few things that he would like to be different up there, and that will be one of the future major changes in our environment.
I'm curious what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Are you going to move the band behind or over to the side somewhere?
The band will probably stay about where it is.
Okay.
But the speaking will happen from the center, and then we'll do something different with the left side. Yeah. So,
that's interesting.
And it'll change. This will probably be one of the weirdest effects of it, is how the Lord's Supper line feels. Mm-hmm. And it's funny to say that, because actually we haven't even talked about that, but that will probably be the experiential shift. And I don't even know how yet, but it will be the more significant experiential shift. Yeah. For most people.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting, like, we've gone back and forth over the years, to like Rod and I serving communion, to where it's kind of defaulted where we want families and people to go up. But when I was on vacation, I have the village experience of communion every week. Then I go to your church where you, usually I'm there when you're there, you serve me communion. Yeah. And you serve everybody communion. Yeah. And then I went to Kai's church, Pastor Kai, and they have communion off to each side, and you go collect it, and then you sit in a row, and somebody prays over it. So each row does it together as like a little family with strangers. And that was interesting. So three very distinct like ways of taking the Lord's Supper that was...
And even
there's personality for you.
Little things and and how history changes things. So I put on gloves.
Yes.
I do this because, interestingly, a long time ago, someone noticed that a person tended to have their shoes off and play with their toes. And then go up and rip the bread, because we used to let people rip off their own piece and dip it. And they'd been like playing with their toes the whole time. And they confided in me that was why they didn't take the Lord's Supper. And I thought, there probably are a whole host of like things about, grabbing this bread that's hard for people, and that and even thinking about, there's versions of accessibility, like for us with the homelessness and stuff like that, beautiful, but if everybody's aware of like, did they wash their hands and all this stuff, it just gets complicated. So that was pretty close to COVID when that discussion happened. So then COVID, it was like gloves became a little more ubiquitous, and it also solved that problem. And so we just stuck with the gloves.
That's interesting.
And, but it is kind of this little interesting thing, right? And then it's just gotten baked in, but it's noticeable. And I've had people say to me since, like, hey, I really appreciate that you wear those gloves so that the bread's, I don't feel like, you touched your nose and touched my food. And then at your church, the thing that always stands out to me is the hand sanitizer. Mm-hmm. And I find that to be a weird experience, but I know that the gloves are a weird experience, but it's like I put it on my hands, I feel it, and then I'm like touching the bread.
No, I hate it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm like, I feel like I'm getting the sanitizer on the bread, and it's like, am I going to taste it? Mm-hmm. That whole thing is always slightly disorienting to me. Mm-hmm. It's a small, silly little thing.
Right, but it's a thing.
But it changes.
And we started doing that because of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. But those become these subtle cues and part of
the personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And they're unshapeable. Like, we've even learned that, like, personality changes from morning and evening service.
Oh, I have no doubt.
So it's still the same feel, but people are different, right? So and if it's a communal church, it brings change to the.
Oh yeah, and the influential people are different at those two groups, mm-hmm. So there's going to be a different feel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very interesting. Yeah, personality. Churches have personalities. They should take personality tests.
And you could create those.
Which I think you could look at the pastors and say a good portion of that personality is at play, especially if they've been there 7 years more.
Some people, because of their position and role, especially pastors, especially founders, mm-hmm. are going to have a outsized influence on it. Sure. And then the more influential or visible a person mm-hmm. is, the more they will change the personality.
Yeah. I mean, Matt Chandler always said, after 7 years, the things you like and dislike about your church are the things you like and dislike about yourself.
Uh-huh.
And that's been always helpful, because when I run into something that's hard for me at church, then I think, is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is part of me. Is like, I just don't like this about me, and it's at play here, because kind of attract the people that are like you, or you influence each other, and you end up having a similar strengths and weaknesses.
Totally. That's a thing.
Yeah. Anyway, personalities. I don't even know if anybody's like, oh, this is interesting.
Well, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, we can wrap it up.
So, hey, thanks for tuning in. If you have a question, faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. Podcast apps have ways you can ask questions now, even sometimes with a recording.
We're hoping. It's supposed to be
coming.
Yeah.
You can talk to Eric. You can email me.
Yeah.
And we would love to engage your questions. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate all reviews and shares. That helps us.
And people are like,
get out there.
You
can get our personalities.
Yeah.
Out into the world. So.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Thank you. You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.